welcome to the very first episode of I Got a Lot of Things to Say. I'm your host, Kia Dotson. And my very first host is someone I have admired and wanted on my podcast since I ran across his TikTok about maybe 2 years ago. And he graciously said, of course, I would be on your podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, Fatal Prose. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. It's thank you so much. Um, I love your content on TikTok. So I was a little bit late to TikTok. I got on there about 2022. Just looking around, see what it was about. Probably knew that I wasn't going to make content for it because I don't really like to show my face a lot. So even doing this podcast with my face is a feat that I said I was going to conquer in 2024. I'm going to make content with my face on it. I, did my little algorithm thing and I came across your content and I really did like it because it was very much women centered, but um, it was not so much women centered. I think it was people centered. A lot of people probably would have said it is woman centered because of what you say in regards to toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, feminism, deconstructing Christianity, which are all things that I am I agree with and am passionate about. And I think it's something that the Black community needs to hear. I am, for people who are probably going to guess, I am fully Black. I have two fully Black parents. I just came out light, for lack of a better word. Because a lot of people look at me and go, I think she's biracial. And I'm like, I'm not biracial. Both my parents are Black. And I think it's something that the Black community really needs to hear. So tell us, why did you start on TikTok?
Certainly. So I I didn't make content initially. I think I was just a commenter and a listener for about 8 or 9 months, and this was, I think, maybe one of my coworkers told me about it, and so I was just kind of scrolling or whatnot, and would occasionally get into a comment battle or something of that nature. But then the pandemic hit, and and I still wasn't making content. I was just listening to everything that was going on, and it seemed like I was getting more information from TikTok, from because people were protesting and they were posting right there what was going on, and so then I just kind of got glued to my screen. And as it progressed, as that summer progressed, I started to make content. I had written a book, and because of the things that were going on in my personal life, and being kind of sequestered by quarantine, couldn't really do anything with it. And I really started to feel, honestly, my mortality, is how I started first posting. I first post, would start putting up music for my daughter. And then I started just reading from my book and putting excerpts on it because I thought, one of my good friends had passed away that year. And I thought, well, if that were to happen to me, you know, what what would they have to remember me by? So I started putting the book on there, and the book talked about just different things from my life. I'm poet, been writing poetry since like 2001, and it's really that's when I got my name Fatal Prose back then. So that really is my name. A lot of people think that's my tagline or whatnot. So I started posting poetry first, and part of the poetry was questions for recovery because I was a deconstructing Christian. I didn't even know what deconstruction was at that point, but I had been a deacon for several years at my church. Radical Christian. What I mean, I was all but conservative. What I mean, if I wasn't a certain shade, I'd probably be a Republican. What I mean, because of my conservative, bent, based on my theology or whatnot. Married, and I just wasn't, I wasn't a good husband. What I mean, I wasn't, because I wasn't all the way there. I had become very mechanical. I actually stopped writing poetry when I accepted Jesus Christ. And so now I'm, kind of just alone with my phone and started making content. And what happened was, as I started making content, some of that racial, I guess, bigotry that was on the app started to spill over onto my page, and I started making videos in response to that because it seemed like people didn't understand what racism was. Even though I had
Mm.
a Christian background, I still knew Black history and things of that nature. But it seemed like people just didn't understand racism 101, and so I did a series about how to end racism, just trying to educate on that level, and that turned into how to end sexism, how to end homophobia. And so I started to build this carousel of content where, if you were a Black man coming to watch videos, you would be drawn in because I was speaking about racism, but then you would get some content about sexism too, and hopefully be able to
Right.
work in that way. And I kind of tried to walk that razor's edge for a long time, making different content on different systems of oppression, doing my poetry, doing skits, just whatever to pass the time. Because in real life, a lot of us were going a little crazy. I mean, just stir crazy, being
Mm-hmm.
not wondering, not knowing where life was going to turn based on what was happening in the world. And I think one of the key turning points in my content was the year after, kind of, George Floyd and COVID, when they started a really covert, not so covert campaign about critical race theory, and it was just a propaganda campaign that really hit TikTok very hard. And I started making content just purely about that. And I think that's when I first went, I guess, semi-viral, and got a significant amount of followers, doing a campaign called Hot Crit Summer, where I actually took Derek Bale and Kimberly Crenshaw and actual people who were explaining what critical race theory was, and trying to just put as much of that out on the internet so that to counter that propaganda. And what I found from that, and then I'll in here, is that people were really drawn to that information, but the same men and women that were drawn to that information were still using those same tactics when it came to sexism. So they understood racism and they didn't like racism, but they would practice the same philosophy when it came to sexism and not even realize it. And so then, just kind of as a follow up, I did Fall for Feminism, not being a feminist myself, but just trying to put out that same type of content. So putting out, content from hood feminism and putting out bell hooks and things of that nature to expose people to information. And we just got stuck there as a community, to be honest with you, especially with Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit. We were just inundated with misogyny. And so I just kind of stayed there because that's where the community was. And that's where the learning needed to happen, in my opinion. And then it just never stopped. We're still there, in this quote unquote gender war where a lot of, and I'll just, I can only speak for myself, a lot of Black men abhor racism, but practice sexism at the same time. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how I got known for, being a feminist or having woman centered content, because I just started to, just in the same formula, I started to inundate the internet with Black women's voices and women's voices in general, because that's what needed to be heard. And it just continues on from there.
It's funny. I love the what you said about how Black men specifically will abhor racism, but still uphold misogyny and misogynistic ideology, and have kind of a cognitive dissonance, not understanding that they're the same thing. Like it, and like you said, I've been in, I have a couple of mutuals who do also do women centered content, and it's funny to me. It's and the person that I follow, she's black. Black men will run up in there, say the same tired trope: you're gonna die alone, you're gonna have a cat, no one's going to want you. And what really leaps off the page for me is their sheer lack of empathy and compassion. It's like, oh, well, you're a 304 and you need to pick better men. Okay, fair point. I I picked horrible men in my 20s and 30s, and about a year ago I just decided I'm not dating anymore. I'm done. Um I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD. Um, I possibly am on the autism spectrum, and I have sexual trauma. I'm a childhood sexual assault survivor and a sexual assault survivor. And, when I walk into the world, and, when I walk into the world now and I hear stories of women like being promiscuous, I don't sit there, I used to, I don't sit there and think badly of them. I kind of go, I wonder if they have any trauma, and this is why they're doing the things that they are doing. And I have a lot of compassion for them. Um, and these men are just like, no, you're just a hoe. And I'm like, why would I want to date someone or be in a relationship with someone that has that much lack of empathy and understanding that everyone who does that may not be a hoe? They could be suffering from sexual trauma, which I suffered from. I spent the pandemic in trauma informed therapy from 2020 until now. I'm still in therapy. But that was a very hard year for me because I was quarantined. I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. And once a week, I had to go to therapy and unpack all of the stuff that, you know, I had bottled up, and I got to process a lot of things that I was like, oh, and get a better understanding. Oh, this is why I did this. That makes sense. And so as the more I went into therapy these past couple of years, I've become more empathetic. I've become more compassionate. I've become more like I want to reach a level of understanding, like why they don't want to expand their emotional intelligence. They don't want to get emotional intelligence. They don't know what emotional intelligence is. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we are socialized as men and women. Women are socialized to have emotional intelligence. And I think that's why you get a lot of, girls mature faster. It's because we've been told we have to now carry on the emotional load for everybody. We have to carry the emotional load for men. And one of the ways that we have to learn to do that is to get emotional intelligence. Whereas men were not indoctrinated or socialized to do that. They were socialized to, you go out, you make money, you bring it back, you sit and you do whatever. And I think as women become more independent, as we start going to college, getting degrees, getting jobs that are able to sustain us, we realize that no, we kind of want the emotional intelligence too. And men are deciding, well, what about this? What's this emotional intelligence? We didn't have to do that. No, you didn't, because you know women couldn't really live by themselves and they really couldn't do for themselves. And so, no, you didn't have to do it, but now you have to do it. And I see a lot of men just, I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, bye. And a lot of women are going, me, myself included. Okay, well, I've just decided not to date because not to date is better and safer and calmer. I know for me, as someone who may be on the autism spectrum, I pretty much think that I am. Romantic social cues are really hard for me.
Right.
Unless you're being creepy, flirty, I don't really know the difference between a healthy flirting interaction and you just being really friendly. And so if you're having a healthy flirty interaction with me, I'm just assuming you're being really, really nice. Um, and just be like, oh, okay, well, it was nice meeting you. Like, I don't think they'll go, oh, this guy's like really into me. I just go, oh, you just want to be my friend. Because I miss some of those cues that neurotypical people may not miss. So unless you're just being a creep, and at that point, I'm like, you're being a creep. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm I'm like, oh, okay. And it causes a lot of anxiety for me because now I have to differentiate, okay, do you like me or are you just wanting to be my friend? And, it's like, oh, well, I don't know which one is which. And then I get flustered and I just, okay, I either shoot down the interaction altogether because I don't know what to do. What do I do? Or and I was just like, you know what? I never liked dating. I never liked the concept of dating. I don't believe in playing games with people. I get anxious when I do all of these things. So let me take the anxiety out of this and just not do it. It may not be a healthy way to be, but it's for me a safer, more less anxiety ridden way to be. And I probably will pick that among anything else.
No, absolutely. I think you said when we talk about the manosphere and how the manosphere has affected relationships, right? I think that's part of it. I think the divestment movement is in part a reaction to the manosphere or just not being an unwillingness to understand what women are
Mm-hmm.
asking for, as far as not just in intimacy and relationships, but just in general in society. There was a study that was looking at young men's reaction to feminism, right, between I think ages 18 and 24, and they were saying that 50% of young men think that feminism is negatively impacting them and their ability to succeed, right? And so when
Mm-hmm.
you look at that and say, well, feminism, first of all, is just a woman's move to equality within the genders. If you're saying that my move to equality is affecting your ability to succeed, then we're completely at odds with each other. Because I'm a woman, I'm going this way, right? I'm trying to get a better life for myself. And you're going this way, trying to go backwards to a time where I have less rights. And we're somehow going to come together in a relationship, right? and um
Right.
and maybe there's a substrata of women who will accept that because they want the security of a relationship, and they want the kind of the romance and all the flowers that they were groomed and conditioned to want as children to have, the fairy tale wedding and all of those things. But that
Including me.
yeah, that group is getting smaller, right? And so now you have a widening gap of lonely men, right, who think they're entitled to have a woman based on the old American dream. You're going to have the wife and the children and the picket fence, but
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily view women in the right way to have that, because it's not an entitlement. Women are human beings just like you are. But I think
Right.
it's easy to do that when you're in a society where you've been conditioned as a man not to see yourself as human or even to recognize what your humanity is. So we're on this spectrum, as men, and I was on this spectrum as well, of a very linear, from point A to point B. You have losers on the left and you have winners on the right. And as a man, you're
Yes.
trying to get out of the loser category into the winner category. And once you're a winner, then you should have a woman. A woman should, women should come easy because you got money, you got wealth, you got upward
Right.
mobility, all these things. So now you should have the pick of the litter. And when that doesn't happen, or when even that perception of you're still in this category over here, but you perceive that because of the way women are, even if you get over there, they're not gonna do it because it's not fair, because
And
society is set up for women to succeed and not men. And so you
right.
have this strange phenomenon where the men's liberation movement started in the 70s as inspired by the women's liberation movement. And that's
Yes.
where the manosphere kind of evolved from, but now it's feminism's fault.
Right. And it's so this is something that my therapist told me. Um, in the beginning of our session, like right when I started seeing her. And she said, and a number, and a advice columnist, because I love advice columns. That's like one of my obsessions. And my favorite advice columnist is Carolyn Hacks, and she writes for the Washington Post. And she's even said this: when you when you are looking for a relationship, there is no guarantee you will be in one, because the other person has to also want to be in a relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you feel that you are entitled to a relationship does not mean that you will get one. It just means that that's what you want. But as the Rolling Stones so famously said, you don't always get what you want. And that was something that I kind of had to sit back and think about too, because I sometimes, when I was younger, felt like, well, if I like you and you like me, we should just be in a relationship and that should be the end of it. And that's it. And it's like, no, because maybe that person doesn't want to be in a relationship with you.
Right.
And you can't force anyone to be in a relationship with you. They either want to be there or not. And so, one of the things my therapist would say is, I think it's very important for every person, everybody, to be okay with just being unpartnered, because being unpartnered is just that. It's a statement of fact. You do not have a partner. It does not mean that you are unworthy. It does not mean that you are unlovable. And I think sometimes, because men aren't socialized, raised, or conditioned to really feel their feelings or to say what their feeling is, I think a lot of them who are lonely feel like, not only am I entitled to somebody, but um, I've been told that this is what I'm supposed, like you said, if I do all these things, I'm supposed to get a person, and I'm not really supposed to be alone. And because I am alone, there must be something wrong with me. I used to think that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, there's something wrong with me because I was single. I've been single more than partnered. So I just felt like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm single. And I had to change my perspective and go, there's nothing wrong with you because you're single. You're just single. You're not undeserving of love because you're single. You're just single. And to add on to that, you are loved. Look at all your friends that love you.
Right.
Look at your family that loves you. And I come from a huge, like, even without my step family, I come from a huge family. Like, we could go to Rhode Island and take over half of Rhode Island. It's like, that's how big my family is. So it's like, look at all these people that love you. So you're not unlovable. You are being loved right now. But because society has put a premium on romantic love and romantic relationships, we think that if I'm not in a romantic relationship, then there is something wrong with me and I'm not being loved. When the reality is, anyone that loves you, regardless of what type of love it is, you are being loved. And it means that you are lovable because these people are loving you and deciding to be in your life, because they could just be like, you know what? I don't want to be bothered. But no, these people show up for you. And once I got that, I started being okay with
Right.
being unpartnered, because I have tons of people that love me, and I I nurture and enrich those relationships. And that's, I think, is another thing a lot of men don't do. A lot of men don't nurture their platonic relationships. A lot of their platonic relationships, especially with men, are very superficial, very much like, we're going to talk about football or some other sport, and maybe music if that's what we're into, and maybe sneakers if that's what we're into, but you don't have any superficial things. And I think that's another reason why men are lonely, because the relationships that you do have that are platonic, you're not putting anything in it, because you think that I'm supposed to be in the romantic relationship because everyone told me that this was the better love to have is this one over here. So I don't really care about this love over here because I was told this one was the better one.
Right.
And it's like love, regardless, is the better option, whether it's platonic or romantic or familial or whatever. And I think we need to, as a society, and I think we're kind of beginning to do that as a society, go, you know what, as long as you're loved, you're okay.
Right. No, that really hit home because that was a position that I put myself in, and I think it goes all the way back to the way we define manhood and enter into manhood, right? Because if you're defining manhood as, men don't necessarily show emotions, especially to other men, then you're going to have activity based relationships. We're going to play basketball. We're going to go, watch a game. Me, I was in the kind of in the music scene, so we're going to go do a show, or we're going to put together this event or work on an album or something like that. But when it comes to sharing what's going on inside of you, right? That's not something that we do, and that's not even something we do with ourselves. We just push it down, and this is me speaking for myself. You just kind of push it down, keep it moving. It's kind of the catchphrase for that. If something happens, you experience trauma, you survive it, and you just push forward, right? And never really getting back to dealing with that. So then when you're in your 30s and 40s and you're dealing with ever evolving and complex problems, you're raising children. Now you have a wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you have this whole
Mm-hmm.
family, which you've been conditioned to think is supposed to be this separate nuclear thing that's on its own, not kind of separate from all your other family. Now you're isolated, and so a lot of men suffer with
Right.
depression because they don't have a lot of people to talk to. And this is where the manosphere actually comes into play, because the manosphere was supposed to be this smaller world or safe space for men where men can build themselves up, right? So you're working on your
Right.
fitness, your hustle culture, very much connected to the
Yes.
manosphere, right? Um, but then you got pickup artists, they're teaching you how to maneuver women because women are set up to be kind of this adversarial force because you're not thinking of women as human beings, you're thinking of them as acquisitions, just like a job or some,
Absolutely.
something like that. So, oh, here's the cheat code to get the girl, right? Just like I would share you the cheat code for the video games you play. And so it because there was not a component in the manosphere on dismantling patriarchy, which again, going back to the men's liberation movement, was kind of what it was originally about. Now you have this toxicity where we're just trading, you're just exchanging demons because nobody's actually
Right.
invested in that inner healing. We're just, again, still focused on the exterior. Here's how you get from being a loser to a winner, and we're going to help you do that.
Right.
We as men are going to come together and help you get to this. Even though, because we're in a capitalistic society, we know everybody's not going to be a winner. You
Exactly.
positive think all you want. The way the system is set up, everyone is
Everybody.
not going to win. You know,
It's it's funny. It's funny you say that. So I'm Catholic, and um, where my family is from, large concentration of Black Catholics. And my priest that we had at my church said that exact same thing. Capitalism, in order for us to be in capitalism, there always has to be someone at the bottom. Everyone can't be at the top. That's why capitalism is so dangerous, because capitalism needs people at the bottom who are never going to rise to the top. You need those people in order for capitalism to work. And so, but no one who wants to be on the top. I mean, on the bottom. No one. Nobody wants to be on the bottom. And so, capitalism also works with, well, I can show you how to be on the top. Like you said with the manosphere, I can show you how to be a winner. If you just buy my course for $599,
right?
I can show you how to be on top. And it's like, do you really need a $600 course to tell you that? No. But when you're not really in community, and I really believe that the idea of a nuclear family and only looking out for you and yours is a white supremacist construct, and something that we really need to wash away with, because we are all should be in community with each other and learn about community and helping other people. When you have that mindset and you were raised that way, and all of us in some way was raised that way, unless you had a community that actively uh, denied that reality.
Right.
And I don't think any of us really lived in a household or in a community or in a family where we were actively saying capitalism is not a thing that works. I know I wasn't. I wasn't raised like that.
Right.
But we have to start understanding that everyone needs to be lifted and everyone needs to come up, and then everyone can be a winner, so to speak. It's kind of like how I feel about my light. My light burns brighter when I help other people's light to burn. I do not have to diminish someone else's light for my light to be brighter, because mine will be brighter if I help yours be brighter, and help yours be brighter, and help yours be brighter. Everybody's light is going to be bright because we're helping each other. And if you haven't, and for, and to tie it back to men, if you, like you said, if you've just been raised that you're supposed to have the wife and the picket fence and the house with the car garage and the dog and the kids, and those are the only people you should be worried about, and you were not socialized to have long sustaining friendships or platonic relationships with other people, then yeah, you are going to be lonely. And when you are lonely and when you are depressed, you will go and try to find anything that is going to help you out of that. So, yes, you're going to go to the manosphere. You're going to find another religion. If the religion that you were in is not helping you, this is how people get into
Right.
cults. This is one of the ways people get into cults. I'm lost. I don't have anyone. I'm searching for connection. So you have all these people searching for community, which is something we should automatically have as human beings on the earth. But instead of going, oh, you know what, let me go out into my community and build a community, we decide to go to the manosphere because it's easier. And they're saying what I want to hear. Because I don't want to hear that I may not be with anybody. And I don't want to hear that just because I have the job and the car and all of that, that I'm still not going to get anyone. I don't want to hear that. So and because to me, still not having someone, it still makes me feel like a loser. And so I want to feel like a winner.
Right.
So Fresh and Fit and Kevin Samuels, which we could do a whole podcast on that man.
Right.
Good God. Um, and Andrew Tate, who every time I hear Andrew Tate, I just laugh because I'm like, your ass got arrested by a teenager because you wanted to get a lick back on a teenager. And because of that and your arrogance, you got arrested. Congratulations, you played yourself. but but it's like you would rather listen to that because that is more appealing. But and it does give you the air of a community. It does give you the aura of, oh, this is a community because we're all suffering and we're all can't get women and we're all this, that, and the third. The same thing with incels. And but it's like, this is not the community that's going to help sustain you. This is not the community that's really going to help you. You are going to have to do some work to unpack what society has taught you, because what society taught you was not accurate, and it was based on white supremacy. Because if you go back and look at indigenous tribes, look at other communities of color, before this whole white supremacy thing, they didn't have any of this stuff. Men are the higher and everyone else is below, and only think of yourself and not anybody else. They didn't have that. You had indigenous tribes that were matriarchal. You had tribes in Africa that were matriarchal. You had tribes that we're all going to find what we need to do to help everyone in this community, and we got away from that. And I do believe uh, the white supremacy and those ideologies is how we got away from it. And somehow, I say this all the time, I was like, the biggest advertising campaign that has ever been unleashed on the world is the idea that cisgendered white men are the superior. They're the smartest, they're the most attractive, they are this, that, and the third. And every single person on the planet should strive to be like this. And if you aren't inherently like this, you should strive to be like this. And they ran with that gag, and the gag is still working thousands of years
Mm-hmm.
later. We're still trying in different types of ways to live up to that. And I'm like, well, I'm not white and I'm not a man. I am cisgendered, but I'm not any of those things. So why should I try to live up to that? I'm not. I'm just going to do something else because this don't make no sense. And I'm shocked that other people haven't realized that yet. Like, it ain't working for you. Is it working for you? No. Is buying things and being a consumer working for you? No. None of these things are working for you. And there's nothing stopping you from not believing it anymore. So why are you still believing it?
No.
It's like there's a hold, and you're not going to go to jail if you don't believe this. You're not going to lose your things if you don't believe this, but it still has a hold on us. And the white dude is like, we did it again. And I'm like, okay, like, we stop. We all need to just get off the train right now.
No, absolutely. One of the things that one of the epiphanies that came to me as I like studied and listen to women more is that patriarchy is much older than racism,
Yes.
right? We see racism and quote unquote white supremacy start like maybe with the doctrine of discovery. You know what I mean? The Inquisition. So maybe it's 500, 600 years old. But patriarchy started with people of color. Unfortunately, it started with black men and people of color
Hmm.
not wanting to be egalitarian, right? So you look at uh, the major religions, right? Christianity did not start in Europe. Neither did Islam. Neither did Judaism. None of
Right.
these started
Right.
in Europe, but they are all patriarchal religions, right? That kind of excommunicate and downgrade women to second class citizens. Citizens. You know what I mean? And I speak specifically regarding Christianity because that's what I practice. It starts in the very beginning, letting you know, oh, the man is going to rule over the woman because of what the woman did. You know what I mean? And that's how the greatest story that was ever told begins. With the subjugation of women. And what happened was, you put that religion, you know what I mean, into medieval Europe where they're going through the Black Plague, you know what I mean, where a third of them die, you know what I mean, and then the Catholic Church gets hold of and uses that as a method to control a land that was mostly pagan before, you know what I mean, and
Yes.
now we're going
Yes.
to kind of mesh things together, but you're going to practice this, or we're going to literally burn you at the stake, you know what I mean, and then once all that happened in Europe, they exported it to the rest of the world. You know what I mean? So, colonization was just the continuation of what was going on in Europe. And now, specifically with African American men, you have a situation where you're separated from your culture and you're trying to escape the dehumanization of racism, right? and journey into an established manhood. But the way you've learned to the definitions, the context, the parameters of that manhood is still structured in capitalistic patriarchal white supremacy. It's the way you define yourself as a man is by getting money, is by being able to exploit, manipulate, and control women, is being able to get more resources for yourself and separate yourself from others, to look the flyest, you know what I mean, to dress the coldest, you know what I mean, to speak, you know, with the most, you know, persuasive language. All of these things, the way that we define manhood is based off a patriarchal structure that we inherited from, you know, our former slave owners, just to be blunt, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but we kind of start, you know, our ancestors kind of kicked that off, and it just got more and more exaggerated as time went on. So now you have to, if you're going to break free from racism, you have to break free from patriarchy as well, because what was being done to us, we're doing to the people that we say we love.
And that's really interesting. I didn't think of patriarchy being older than racism. I kind of always felt that racism was the start of all of it. But that kind of makes sense when you think about it. And the reason I say that is I look at the religion I belong to. I'm Catholic. Women are not allowed to be priests. We can be nuns, but we can't be priests. But when you look at all the stories of Jesus and who was with him, and like, for instance, when Jesus rose from the dead, the 12 apostles were nowhere to be found. It was Mary Magdalene that went to the tomb. It was a woman. When you see about who gathered when he died, it was women. Women have, I feel like, have always been the messengers. When I and I'm doing this basically through Christianity and Catholicism, even though I'm deconstructing my Christianity as well. You see where in all of these important things that happen, it was a woman that was there, but the women don't get the credit.
Right.
And you use that as an excuse to deny women to do things that they are very well capable of doing. And so when you said nope, it's patriarchy, I instantly thought of that and would go, oh, you know what, that makes sense, that the patriarchy would be before the white supremacy, and maybe the white supremacy came from the patriarchy instead of the other way around.
No, absolutely.
You know, um, so let's talk about your fabulous, fabulous series. It's like the comic, the Manosphere
Yeah.
comic. I love it. I love the illustrations. I love the voiceovers. How did that start?
So, as many things, kind of by accident, you know. Over the last year or two, you know, I got, you know, into generative AI and was just playing around with it. And at the same time, I was getting really frustrated because, as I said, you know, we've been having these same conversations on TikTok for the last 3 years straight, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same argument to where I can literally, and I am doing this. I'm actually literally reposting videos I made 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and addressing topics that people at least uh, behave as if they don't know the answer to, right? You know, so we've because it's like, oh, well, I said this before. Let me just repost this again. So maybe if logic and appeals to common sense and empathy don't necessarily work, maybe just putting a mirror up and showing the ridiculousness of how some of these things sound would work better, right? And so I literally started to just do satire because you know, I'm a fan of the Boondocks. I'm a child of the Dave Chappelle skits, and you know, and just sketch comedy in general, in living color. So that's a language in of itself. And I was like, you know what? Let me just put a mirror up. So I started with Kevin Samuels, created a character Dustin Samuels, because they just would not let the ideas, pass away. You know what I mean? And I, rest his soul. I never speak over the dead, but the ideas that people cherry picked from him, because what he had a lot to say, but people cherry picked certain ideas, the most misogynistic things he said, and those are the clips they ran
Right.
over and over and over and
And
over and
over.
over again until it became its own theology. And so the ghost of Dustin Samuels was born. He's a demonic spirit that possesses men and causes them to just say the most outlandish things. And it just went on from there. And then as I'm watching, going through my FYP page, I see something ridiculous, and then it becomes a strange tales from the Manosphere episode. And there is no shortage of material in sight because I think because we have defined who we are as men based on a dominator model of how we're able to control other people, specifically women. Um, it just continues to regurgitate. It's ingrained in some programming, and until we start to really look at ourselves and divest from that, it's just going to continue to be ridiculous. You know what I mean? How can you say that you love someone, that you love your wife, right? You love your daughter, you love your mother, but you don't care about the ideas that negatively impact their lives every single day. In fact, you embrace and uphold every single one and think that you, as one man, is going to just protect them from all of it because you're so strong. Even though you're constantly putting all this negativity out into the universe about them for other men to consume and participate in. It makes no sense, right? It's like,
I think
you want to raise children in a safe neighborhood, but yet you're steadily passing out all these, weaponry and all these things to
right,
unalive your kids
right,
with.
right.
You know what I mean? Listen, and that's not, I'm
And
not making a comparison between that, but it's the same as these are people that you care about, and you're at the one time you'll treat her as a special island, but every other woman you still have very negative chauvinistic attitudes to. It makes no sense. You're creating a world that's ultimately going to hurt them, right? And until men in mass say figure that out and dismantle it, you have strange tales of the manosphere.
I think I think one of the one of the reasons why I think men can say, I love this person, um, like you said, how can I love my wife, but then I have these negative connotations of women? I think it's a couple of things. I think one, they may view their wife as different than all the other women, when in actuality, your wife is just like every other woman. And so I think it's one, she's different. She's not like all these other women. And I also think, too, I think men are also kind of socialized to view love as what what is beneficial to me, if that makes sense. Love is not an action word or something that you selflessly do to make the other person feel safe and protected. It's almost like, well, um, I love people that I see a benefit to. So if you're doing what I want you to do, then I'm going to love you. And I think the way that women view love and the way that men view love, I think it is directly caused by how we have been socialized in our society. I think when women view love, we view it as it's a sacrifice. We are the bearer of children. And so to be a mother, you need to be nurturing. You have to sacrifice things to be a mom. And so I think that type of idea of love, we kind of extend it to our romantic relationships. Men aren't taught that. And so I think for them, love is whatever I can get out of it. And if I can't get anything out of it, I don't love it. And I think that is one of the reasons. And the woman is different, and so I can love her and still do all these other things. So they don't have an idea of um, love being, I can love you or respect you or like you and not want anything from you. Like, I can love you as a person and say, I don't want anything from you. I love you because you're a human being on this planet and I want the best for you. And part of that, for I feel like for me as a woman, is that I was socialized because I am a woman and I decided that this is the way I present to the world is who I am. That, oh, well, you're supposed to, it's on the same level of emotional intelligence. When I love someone, I'm supposed to help them. I'm supposed to nurture them. I'm supposed to want to do for them. And I also kind of want the best for them. But when we socialize boys, I feel like we don't socialize them to view love in that way, which is why I think a lot of men view love as I love it if it makes me feel good and I can get something out of it. Whereas with women, I love it if I can help someone and nurture them and help them to be great. Does that make sense?
No, no, I understand that. And that makes sense. I'll to add to that. Look, my wife said something to me years ago, and I didn't get it when she first said it. She asked me about a verse in the Bible because we were super Christians, and we were always in the church. And she's like, greatest commandment is to love thy neighbor as thy love thyself, right? Love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, but love your neighbor as you love yourself. How can we teach a lot about loving our neighbor, but we don't teach at all about loving yourself. How can you love your neighbor or love God if you don't love yourself, right? And that's not something that's taught, right? So, and I think that's men and women,
Hmm.
because women will get into that
That's true.
self-sacrificial love, because greater, no man has known a greater love than this, that he give his life for his friends, right? So that we're taught this
Right.
this self-sacrificing, almost martyrdom example of love, right? So we're killing ourselves to love this other person. And we're like, why don't you love me back? Why don't you kill yourself for me like I'm killing myself for you? When in reality, we should not be
Hmm.
killing ourselves. We should be learning how to live better lives together, right? And
Yes.
so I see, so women get into that trap. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's parenting and raising children because that's their traditional role. And men
Traditional
fall into
role.
that same trap where they're working jobs that they hate and they're miserable and they don't talk to anybody and they go to the bar after the job because they're drinking, and they're also miserable, you know what I mean, and self
Hmm.
sacrificing. But they'll say that they love their family, right? And then when it all falls apart, they'll also go home and unalive them, right? Because we have
Right.
that as a problem too. Not saying that everyone goes that far, but we really have to learn how to love each other and that starts with loving ourselves because we're not coming into a
Absolutely.
marriage or relationship as a half of a person to make a whole. When you talk
Right.
about 50-50, because I'm going to bring my 50 and you bring your 50 and together we'll be
No, you have to. It's a
100%.
hundred. A hundred.
Right.
It's a hundred. A hundred. One of the things, and it's funny because when I say this to my mom, she kind of bristles a little bit, and I think it's because of the idea of what self love looks like to a lot of people. But I say all the time, I love myself above everyone else. I love myself more. And I think when my mom hears that, she sees it as being selfish. Like, I'm only going to do what feels good to me, and I'm only going to worry about myself. And that's not necessarily what I mean when I say I love myself above all things. What that really means is I am going to be as loving and as gentle and as caring with myself. I'm going to speak kind words to myself. I'm going to give myself grace when I need it. I know that I am not perfect. I will make mistakes. I will say things that I probably shouldn't say. But the first thing that I'm going to do is with myself go, okay, you made a mistake. It's okay. We still love you, because when you fill your cup up, you can then fill up other cups. You can't fill someone else's cup when there's nothing in it. And I think part of that is loving yourself. It does mean if I have a need that needs to be met, that for me to meet it. It doesn't mean to meet it at this particular moment, because this particular moment may not be the right moment to meet it. But it does mean, oh, you know what? I haven't gotten a lot of sleep lately. I'm going to rearrange some things so I can have some time to myself and recharge myself. That's a part of loving yourself.
Right.
Holding yourself accountable for your actions is a way of loving yourself. You know, Kia, you shouldn't have said that. Why did you say that to that person? You shouldn't have said that. And okay, I need to apologize. Making amends to people that you've harmed is a way of loving yourself. At least that's how I view it.
Right.
It's not just, oh, I'm just going to do things that make me feel good. I'm going to buy whatever I need to buy to make me feel good. No, it's about being kind to yourself, using kind words to yourself, because when you use kind words to yourself, you start using kind words to other people, at least in my experience. When I started being gentle and kind and not overly critical and not expecting perfection from myself, I also started giving it to other people. When I was very critical and judgmental of myself, I was very critical and judgmental of other people, because that's how I felt about myself. So I just came to an epiphany when you said to add to that. Maybe that's another reason why men sometimes do the things that they do. People, because I don't love myself. And so when I don't love myself, I can't love you. If I don't respect myself, then I can't respect you. And because when I love myself and I respect myself and I hold myself accountable, it is very easy for me to love you and respect you. And when you've done something to harm me, go, hey, that was very hurtful what you said, or that was very hurtful what you did. And I think that people have a hard time with that. And the reason why people have a hard time with that, and I think for me, I think religion comes into it. Religion is very binary. It's either good, and if it's not good, it's bad. There is no gray anything, I feel like, in the way that we teach religion. If you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. And if you don't do it, or you're not supposed to do this, and if you do it, then you're bad. No one wants to be a bad person. Nobody.
Right.
I don't want to be a bad person, you know, and no one wants to think of themselves as a bad person. So when we do something that harms someone, a lot of times it is hard to hold ourselves accountable, because I think we go, well, I'm a bad person because I did it. And it's like, the world is a lot more complicated than that.
Right.
You can absolutely be a good person and do bad things. And inverse, you could be a bad person and do good things. I mean, Trump's not a good person. He did a couple of decent things in the White House. I mean, like literally two. But see, a bad person could do good things. So, and I think it's that need to be good and that need to be seen as good. And I think for me, when I started going back, tying this back to loving myself, when I started looking at myself and going, I'm not perfect, I'm a flawed human being, it was easier for me to love that, because, oh, oh yeah, you're right, I'm not perfect, and everything's not going to be perfect, and I'm going to be flawed. It let me give myself some grace for that. It was very easy for me to then give grace to other people for doing, oh, you
Right.
know what, you're flawed, you're a flawed human being, but that's okay. Doesn't make you a bad person. You're just flawed, and that's fine. And I'm going to give you grace for that. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, because you may not even know that you're doing things that you don't realize you're doing. You're doing it and you may not even realize it. So guess what? I'm going to give you a little I'm going to give you a little grace for that. So I think that the idea of loving ourselves, like you said, is really important. I think the idea of building community is really important. I guess I want to know your view. Do you think, because our hour is up, one final thought, do you think that we are going to? So I said this before we started taping. It's like the world is at a precipice right now. We're either going to pull, we're at the edge of the cliff. All of the world, not just the United States, everybody, Canada, Mexico, South America, everybody. We're on the edge of the cliff. Are we going to pull ourselves off the edge, or are we going to jump?
Well, I'm not able to predict the future, but I can tell you what, because both things can happen at the same time, right?
Same
There could
time,
be some
right?
people that fall off the cliff. There could be, certain countries, certain regions that do that, or it could be the whole entire world is engulfed in that, or you could just be in your own personal purgatory, right? So and as a Gen X, kind of elder millennial, I grew up with the end of the world always at the forefront. The world was going to end in 2000. The world was going to end in 2012,
Right.
right? So I'm very desensitized, unfortunately, to this concept of the end, right? My concept of the end is this: the end of the world is coming every single day for somebody, right?
That's
Because
true.
people pass away every day, and so that's their own personal apocalypse. What are you going to do as an individual listening to this podcast to make sure you don't fall off the cliff? First of all, to make sure you're not contributing to what's pushing us there as a society. And then what are you going to do as an individual to influence the people around you that's in your sphere, to help them stay off the edge as well? And if everyone does that, then no, we're not going to fall off the cliff, because we're going to all collectively push back against the powers that be. But if everyone is succumbing to a mob mentality where they're waiting for someone else to save them, or someone else to step in, or someone else to do something, then yes, we will, right? The manosphere, in its worst form, is an echo chamber, right? You're getting into a group of like-minded people that think like you, want to do what you want to do, and you're just bouncing all these ideas, but you're not really letting in dissenting opinions. You're not welcoming. You want to just hear your own voice because you feel like your voice is being smashed out, and that's the most interesting thing in the world. Like, even we as Americans, like just America in general, one of the most privileged societies on the planet right now, think that someone's trying to take something from us all the time. You know what I mean? We all these movies and propaganda about us losing our freedom when we're the ones going around the world taking other people's freedom,
Taking
right?
freedom from other
Same
people.
thing with people that are of the lighter complexion, that think that someone's, the aliens are coming from Mexico to steal their jobs. The black people are going to steal their jobs. The most privileged people always think that someone's going to take something away from them and do to them what they're doing to other people. And black men feel like black women are taking, they're taking the reins, and we live in a matriarchy, not realizing that, four or five women are being unalived a day, in our community.
Right.
And a lot of times it involves other black men participating in that, right?
Right.
That a certain, so so we have to be able to open our eyes outside of our own whatever sphere we're in, manosphere, blogosphere, and be able to look at the world objectively and say, what role do I play in this, and how can I begin to play a more positive role in society? And if we can do that, then I think we'll win.
Fatal Prose, thank you so much. It was a really great discussion. I
Absolutely.
really enjoyed it. Um, well, we've come to the end of our hour. I want to thank Fatal Prose again for being the very first guest.
Thank you.
Yay! And I definitely want to have you back,
Anytime.
because there were other topics I wanted to discuss that, you know, as you're talking, my brain is going like, yes, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about that. So you are now officially a friend of the I Got a Lot of Things to Say podcast, and you are welcome back anytime. Um, so this is the end of our hour. My name is Kia Dotson, and this is I Got a Lot of Things to Say. Catch you next time. Bye.